welcome or welcome back. My name is Brittany and today I have some book reviews for you. I haven't been doing too much lately. I had a baby back in August and so things are just a little crazy. I didn't read as much as I wanted to or really haven't this year during pregnancy, and now with the baby to take care of, reading has been a little bit challenging. So I do have 10 book reviews to catch us up on. Back from July, I read, let me look at my thing, 3 books in July. I got through 5 books in August. I did manage to get through some books in August because I was on bed rest, so I had a lot of time to read. And then I did get through 2 books in September. So, it's going slow, but it's going. So let's just catch up on some book reviews. Let me just yap about what I read recently, and hopefully something sounds interesting so you can pick it up too. So the first book I want to chat about is The River Has Roots, and this is by Emil El-Motar, and this is one of the authors for This Is How You Lose the Time More, which I really enjoyed. So this is their solo novel. Actually, it's more like a little novella. I think it's like 100 and so pages. It was a very short audiobook. It was only about 4, maybe 5 hours. And this book is very fairy tale-esque. It is following our main character, and she is in love with this being, and they have presented themselves to her as an animal, as a human. Like, they are different every time they meet, but our main character knows this is like who she loves. And unfortunately, there's this family in town who is trying to like marry their son off, and he's trying to like woo her and merge their families, and she's just like uninterested. She wants nothing to do with him. Her and her sister are super close. The sister knows about the secret lover, knows that this other guy is trying to like win her affections, but ends up ditching the first sister for the second sister. And things get very complicated very fast, and then the first sister disappears. Something bad happens to her, and so we spend the rest of the book with the second sister trying to figure out what happened, like where her sister went, what's going on in this strange fairy world. It's not like a Court of Thorns and Roses fairies necessarily. It's a lot more magical, a lot more vague. Words are very powerful in this world, which is very interesting, and there's definitely a lot of wordplay with the structure of the story. And we do have a bit of a third perspective, which is our narrator. It does sound like someone is telling us a story about these sisters rather than their perspectives themselves. And it was kind of cheeky a few times in the audiobook. I did like that. I will say if you pick this up, the audiobook production was really well done. I have listened to one other book where there was singing, that being The Lord of the Rings, and I did not like it at all. I just didn't like the singing in that book. But there is singing in this book, and I thought it was really well done. It's not super jarring. It's not this like abrupt change in the story. It makes sense. It flows really nicely. There are a few extra sound effects because water is a character, or more of a central part in this book as well. Their waterway is very important. And so with the singing and the water and like the different voices and with language being very important, it was a very cool audio experience. I really did like the story. And then at the very end, there was a little excerpt from the next book that this author is writing, and that one was super interesting too. I think that one's going to be a short story collection if I'm recalling correctly, and I really enjoyed the little bit we got from that. So really enjoyed this. It was just like a cool, short, unique little story. I think this would be great for spring or fall. Yeah, I really enjoyed this, and I'm glad I got to it. The next book I listened to was Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. Now, this is my first Paul Tremblay experience. This one is following our main character. I don't remember his real name, but he's known as the Thin Kid. When he was younger, I think college age, him and a few other people got together to make horror movie. That was their thing. They were filming at an abandoned school. You get the story of horror movie, what they're trying to write. You quickly learn that I think everyone was dead who was involved in the filming except our main character, the Thin Kid. And now they're trying to do a reboot of horror movie. Like an actual movie production company is going to remake what they did. What they had made has, circulated online. There's a bunch of lore behind it now. It's kind of like the Blair Witch Project, where there's all these theories and like weirdness around it. And so we're following the Thin Kid in the past and the present as we figure out what their movie was about, kind of what happened to his castmates, and how this reboot is going. I will say, while I didn't love the story, I didn't love the direction it went, I can really appreciate the storytelling style because it was very unique. When we get our then and now perspectives, the then parts about them filming the movie is actually told to you as a screenplay. It's not just him recounting, oh, we went to set this day and we did this. Like, you're actually listening to, like, how it looks as a screenplay, like how it's written out. So, like, one narrator's voice would be like, the characters are walking down an abandoned street and there are houses, like, off to the side with lights open, like lights on in the window. The thin kid is trailing behind. And then it would switch to another voice. Like, one of the characters would start talking and you'd have another voice. And then it really did sound like they were reading it as like a round table screenplay, like practice, like with other voices. Like, that's how it sounded, and it was so cool because it just, like I said, wasn't this boring like recount of what happened. We're getting the screenplay, so you do end up knowing what their horror movie was about and what the plot of the movie was. It wasn't scary. There was like a few gross parts, but I wouldn't say this was scary for me. I'm still on the hunt to find my particular brand of scary books. I wish it were a little more paranormal than what it ended up being. The horror of the book is definitely more human in nature, and I just was wanting something like more cursed film, and that's just wasn't really the way it went. I'm not totally gonna write Paul Tremblay off. I don't know, I give him points for creativity on the structure of everything, but just the overall plot of the story lost me, but still not enough to like never read from him again. So if you have other recommendations for him, I'd be open to that. But if you are looking for a unique listening experience, I would recommend this because it was very interesting and different. I then picked up Jurassic Park. I have never actually read this before, but we watched the new one that came out in theaters, and I was like, let's just try reading Jurassic Park. This is by Michael Crichton. This is written in 1990. I was thinking about the Jurassic Park legacy because after the movie, I'm like, is he still like getting money from this franchise? Michael Crichton passed away, but he's just a very interesting guy. I did do a little bit of like nerding out on him, but he actually went to medical school, took his boards to be a physician, but then took like a left-hand turn and started writing and ended up writing Jurassic Park, which we all know to be this like huge thing. Knowing that information is interesting because there is a lot of science in here. In addition, I mean, they're trying to clone dinosaurs, but there's just a lot of science and philosophy and way more discussion on the ethics of this than I thought there would be. I don't know if I'd recommend the audiobook because there are lots of charts and things in here, and I just don't know how that would come across in an audio format, but there is lots of like diagrams because like computer codes, like DNA sequencing, stuff like that, which I just thought was really interesting. If you're unfamiliar with Jurassic Park, we are basically following this really eccentric man who has figured out how to extract dinosaur DNA, create his own dinosaurs, and he is opening up a dinosaur theme park. And so we have a few different characters as they get invited to this island to see the dinosaurs before the park officially opens, and I'm sure you can imagine it goes great when you start messing with dinosaur DNA. Yeah, it was interesting. I did like it. It does deviate from the movie. Well, I guess the movie deviates from the book. So that was just interesting to see like a different ending, different things explored. I do actually want to go back and watch the original Jurassic Park now. But yeah, I did enjoy it. I think I have the next one. Yeah, I do have the next one. So that could be something I finish. If Michael Crichton sounds familiar, he wrote ER, the TV show, which makes sense with his medical background. So I just thought that was interesting. And just like a side tangent here, I talked about the legacy like of Jurassic Park. There are so many book to movie adaptations that have become like cultural phenomenons, like these huge, great successes like Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, Twilight. That's all I got off the top of my head. But there were so many books that I just didn't start thinking about. Like they started as books and now they're these huge things. And I just think that's really cool. So I don't know. I just like nerded out about Jurassic Park and Michael Crichton there for a bit. I then finally picked up Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. This was fun. It was cheeky in its delivery, which I did enjoy. The ultimate mystery of what is going on maybe wasn't so exciting. I did like how it was presented. I do have the second book. I don't know how quickly I will continue, but basically we are following our main character, and he goes through the fact that everyone, including himself, has killed someone and what that means. It ends up being like a larger plot that does tie them all together more than you would think. I guess when I picked this up, I don't know, I just had like a different structure how I thought this would play out in my head, but there is like a central like plot that connects everybody. Some of their deaths relate to the main plot and some of them don't. I don't know. I'm kind of not making sense now. I read this a while ago. But I did have fun while I was reading it. There were some parts that were funny. I guess this really kicks off, now it's coming back to me, because they're having a family reunion at a ski resort. A dead body is found at this ski resort. And so when we start getting into all the different family members, what they were doing, where they were at, they end up like, the body ends up connecting to the family. And then we get all their dirty secrets. So that's how this really kicks off, is at a family reunion. There we go. It's back. The next book I finished was My Husband by Maud Ventura, and I really liked this book. This was so fun. So this is following our main character. She's a wife, she's got 2 kids, she's married, and she's crazy. Like, reading her point of view is just nuts. So she plays a lot of mind games with her husband, and we get the ins and outs of what she is doing and like her logic behind them. So like, she only cheats on Thursdays. Some days have a certain color. Other days she picks a fight specifically. She's extra attentive on another day. And she'll keep track of his transgressions in a notebook. It's very detailed and OCD and like manipulative with her husband. Because if he maybe doesn't compliment her hair, or if he looks at her the wrong way, or doesn't acknowledge her when they're on the couch and they're on their phones, like she's keeping track of all these things. And like, it's wacky. It was so wacky watching her, what felt like spiral, because then she starts to think that he doesn't love her anymore, and so then she starts to act out more, and the things that she does really amps up. But at the very end, the very, very end was so good. There's an extra special little chapter, and it changed the whole experience of that book, and I was like, what? That is awesome. I thought it was super clever. I won't say more than that because I feel like that's a huge spoiler, but I really enjoyed how it ended. I never saw that coming. I really liked it. I'm excited to see what else she writes. I know she has a new book out, but My Husband, like, I would say this is a 4-star. I really enjoyed this one. The next book I finished was The Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor, and this also was another like great book. This was a huge hit for me. I think this storytelling style is super unique, super interesting. And again, another book where you finish it and your whole perspective on what you just read is like shifted and your mind blown and you're like, what? Like, what did I just read? So this is following our main character, Zulu, I think is her name. She is a Nigerian woman and she had an accident as a child. So she is in a wheelchair. She is disabled. She's an author. She has 1 book out, struggling to get another one. And she was just fired from her job at a university. And so she is spiraling. And one night, after a little too much Mary Jane, writes this book about robots. And it becomes a huge success. It's called Rested Robots. That's the name of her novel. And we get to watch her just like catapult into stardom. Like, this was such a random book for her to write, but it was so well done. Like, we get to watch this huge trajectory towards fame. In addition to that, we are getting different family members' perspectives. We are also getting chapters from her book Rested Robots, which was so cool. And when I tell you the ending blew my mind, I was like, what? It was really one of those books where it's like a story within a story, but then you're questioning, like, what was the real story? Like, what was I reading? And I loved it. I loved it. That's all I'll say. I also want to mention the author's ability to write Nigerian culture was beautiful. Like, it was so stunning. Like, I felt like I was in the room with Zulu and her crazy large Nigerian family. Like, it was super cool. So I really enjoyed that one. Next up, I read Between Two Fires by Christopher Buehlman. This book is difficult for me because I know this is really highly praised. I know a lot of people love this in the horror space. This is a medieval horror and even religious horror story. And it's like something about it just did not work for me. Maybe I should have read it instead of listened to it. Maybe I just wasn't in the right headspace. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention. Like, I don't know what it was, but like, it didn't click for me at all. I didn't think it was scary. Like, there were gross and horrifying things, but it wasn't this like, oh my God, like, this is the best horror book I've ever read moment. And there was a part that I like thought quite strange. There's also like with that religious component, I just don't know if I'm like missing, like I missed too many Sunday schools or something. Like, I'm just like missing the religious importance of like what is happening. I don't really know, but like this just like completely missed the mark. In summary, we're following a knight who was like disgraced or dishonored. He lost his title, whatever. We were also following a priest and then a little girl. The knight comes across this little girl. It's a plague-ridden land. Everyone's dead. Like, everyone's like freaked out by everybody. And he's with a group of other men, and they basically want to like rape and kill this little girl when they come upon her at her home. They're like basically like ransacking and pillaging, like what you do during plague. And he decides, he then like saves her, and then they go off on an adventure. The little girl is very odd. She is having religious visions and just like does things or says things that don't really make sense. And then we also get, we have the priest's perspective as well. And then we also get like a perspective of like the demons or angels. Like, we do get some insight to kind of what's going on as well with the larger plague happening. And the three of them like journey across the land. Basically, their goal is to get to France because the little girl says so. And we come across like fever dream, like demon psychosis, like weird stuff. Like, I can't even verbalize what happens because I don't even know. I did think it was odd though, just like the little girl and the knight's relationship. There was just some weirdness there. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say about that. Another bummer of a read. This feels blasphemous, but I read Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson, and I did not like this either. Okay, so this is about Tress, and one thing I do appreciate about Brandon Sanderson is his world building. This is a very unique world in that Tress lives basically on a rock. This is like where her home, her community is, and their sea is not water. It's full of spores, and there's different types of spores. Her particular sea is full of spores that if water or liquid comes in contact with the spores, like vines and trees and greenery will just like erupt and like break through ships and kill everybody. But there's other seas where like spiky things will pop up or like tentacles. I don't know. There's like all different types of seas. So like that world was very cool. Tress is really enamored by the king's son, the prince, and the prince gets sent off to go basically campaigning, and his father wants to marry him off to another kingdom for alliances. He has been sending Tress like teacups and letters during his travels, and then she stops hearing from him, and when the king comes home, he's got his nephew and his son is nowhere to be seen. And so she is so worried about her friend and decides to sneak onto a ship and try and rescue him. That is kind of like, I don't know. I know a lot of people really love Tress of the Emerald Sea too. I think what lost me is that I thought this would be a traveling story, and while it is, we spend the whole time on the boat, which I guess I wasn't expecting. I thought we were going from like land to land to land, like in hunt for her friend and her love interest, but we spend the entire time on the ship and with the crew. And like, I think the biggest thing that just like turned me off on this was the humor. I thought it was really stupid. And like just dumb. And like, it's funny because I like Brandon Sanderson's humor and romance when he's not trying to write humor or romance, because Yumi and the Nightmare Painter was the same way for me. I didn't like that relationship and that romance in there, but there's other romances in his fantasy like Mistborn or the Stormlight Archive that I enjoy. That that's not the point of the book, but it's really well done. So the humor in this one is, I don't know, like he was just trying to be too funny. It like wasn't working for me. The narrator is a character that you will encounter in other Cosmere books if you read other Cosmere books. If there's any Swiftie crossovers with books and Taylor Swift, I watched her interview with the Kelsey brothers, and what she said about her music I feel like applies here, where you can just listen to her music like a normal person, have fun, understand it, and move on with your day. But if you know about those Easter eggs, then you know, and you can like dig into things more. And that's how this book feels for a Sanderson fan. Like if you've read the entire Cosmere, you will pick up on things like investiture and design. There's another word. You'll pick up on things that are from other Cosmere books. But if you're not familiar with it, it doesn't affect your reading comprehension. You might just be like, well, that was kind of weird, I don't know what that was, and move on with your day. But it's not going to affect your overall story. With who he chose to tell the story, he just made him too goofy and way too silly. So like there's a part where like we're getting introduced to all the shipmates, and the narrator's like, their names aren't important, we'll just all call them Daves. It's all the Daves. And I'm like, that's fucking stupid. And then there's a part where Tress is like, oh yeah, she's talking about like their bathroom on the ship. Because like any body fluids will affect the spores. And so she's like, this seems gross and dangerous. Danger gross? And I'm like, what the fuck? I don't know. It just was so stupid. Like, oh, I just didn't like it. So that was kind of a bummer. Because I know a lot of people really like Tress of the Emerald Sea, but that just was like a big fat miss for me. I did not think it was funny at all whatsoever. I can't even really say I enjoyed like the classic like Sanderson like storytelling and like the build and like the reveals. I don't know, just the whole thing just didn't land for me. Sorry, Sanderson friends. The next 2 books I finished are just like fun, silly reads. I read The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. I have not read from Frida McFadden before, but the movie is coming out later this year, so I thought it'd be fun to read it. And really like postpartum, that's about all my brain has time for. And this was just like a silly, goofy, ridiculous thriller, fun old time. We are following our main character, the housemaid. She gets hired to work for this rich family, and the woman of the house who hires her is just like fucking crazy. Like you're like reading this book and you're like, I would quit. But you learn our main character, the housemaid, can't. She was incarcerated. She's freshly out of prison. Like she needs a job. This job is offering her like room and board. You know, she cleans. She sometimes takes care of their kid. And she can live there and makes really good money. But the lady's crazy. So like one scene in particular just is like, what? She spends all day cleaning the kitchen. Like, you know, she's made dinner, she's cleaned the kitchen. It's the next morning, and the owner of the home, the woman, is like dumping milk out. The fucking place is a mess. And she's like, where's my papers for the PTA? Like, they were on the counter. And the girl's like, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't see any papers. Like, I cleaned yesterday, but I didn't see anything. I swear, I'm really sorry. And then the owner of the house is like, well, clean this mess up. You left a disaster in the kitchen. And the like girl's like, am I going crazy? Or like the owner will like purposely tell her wrong information and then like question her on it. And like, it's just, it does build a lot of good suspense in that way, because you're like, this lady's crazy. But when you figure out what's going on, she might not be as crazy as you think she is. So I did think that twist was fun. Like, this isn't a literary masterpiece by any means, but it was enjoyable. It was a quick, easy, entertaining read, and I'm excited to see how they adapt that to a movie later this year. Lastly, I read The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. Again, just a ooey gooey, cheesy, fun read. It was perfect for fall time if you're looking for a romance. There are probably 3 or 4 different sex scenes. They're descriptive, but not super graphic or like intense, I guess. Just so you know, if that's something you either want or don't want or are indifferent about with your romances. But we were following our main character, and she has inherited her aunt's cafe, and she's like, this is great. Like, I was basically like dying in the corporate world, like no purpose, so let's like move to a small town, let's switch things up, let's take over this cafe and like see how life goes. She's very unsure of herself, insecure, like this is a big change for her. She doesn't know if she can do it, if she can maintain this cafe. And then she runs into the sexy farmer who like shy and doesn't really say many words, and the whole town loves him because he's a sweetheart once you get to know him, blah blah blah. Your typical small town romance. Anyways, they hit it off to an extent, but like they don't let each other know that. And then they get involved in a few town events, and then he is helping her find like who's vandalizing the cafe, and so that's how they get close. And it was cute, like it was sweet, it was fun. Their conflict was kind of legit. He had a prior breakup that was really devastating for him, and so he has a lot of fear surrounding new relationships. And so that does create some tension for them. And then she's just like kind of also unsure of herself as well. So that just like feeds the situation. But overall, like, it was cute. It was fun. I know there's more in the series. So if the mood strikes, I think there's one about Christmas trees and like you follow other couples in the town. That's that format. So yeah, I thought it was fun. It was cute. So that is it. That is my recent wrap up for the 10 books I've gotten through. I am hoping to keep trucking along, reading some more this year. Let me know what you thought about some of the books I read down below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!